It's not really a ghost story. It's just funny because, I do like all this stuff, and, I tend to like wag my butt when I'm eating something that I like.
Oh my God, I do the happy food.
Yeah, the happy butt dance.
I know, he makes fun of me. He's like, "You're doing your food dance," and I'm like, "Yeah, because I got snacks."
I'm wagging my tail.
I'm a happy puppy.
Exactly. So it's funny because my son he's got my moves like completely. So he'll be sitting there like brushing his teeth going, "Mommy." And he's like sitting there brushing his teeth doing like all these like weird sort of breakdancey moves. And I'm like, look at you with the moves like Jagger.
That's great.
Oh, he's hysterical. He is my clone.
Has he ever seen anything? Because my kids have seen stuff.
He has. He tends to get afraid of it. So, I try to explain to him that it's not a big deal. The
Yeah.
house that we live in right now does have some occupants that are not human.
Yes, it
Uh,
does. I met them in the basement.
yes, so there's that. But at the same time, it's like I don't want him to be afraid because there's nothing to be afraid of. I've gridded the yard, I've gridded the house. I cleanse the house like, you know, probably about 4 times a year.
Hmm.
I like to think the house has a pretty good vibe to it.
It does. I actually had some of the best sleep I had had in years when I
Yeah,
was up in your basement with whatever, like, it's a dude and it's a woman, and they just like were so chill, and I felt so peaceful,
yeah,
and I slept better than I have in a very long time.
yeah. People that have hung out in the basement, there was only like one person I'd say that they didn't like, and they made it known, like really known. Um, it was a person I've known for years and years and years, and I don't know what happened, but for whatever reason, she went down a very dark rabbit hole and, kind of lost her mind. And when I saw her again, I felt like there was something attached to her, just something negative.
Mhm.
And that was before I did all the gridding, like all the major gridding. And, since she was invited, it could kind of tag along. And
And she didn't get sick at the edge of the property because you hadn't done your gritting yet.
right. But she did get stuck on my garden fence. Literally, like she so funny story. So I have garden gnomes. I have a few of them. I think they're hysterical. They amuse me. And so I have them like hidden throughout the yard. And
Mhm.
she had messaged me on Facebook to tell me she was going to come and steal my garden gnomes. And I was like, that's some bullshit right there. Why would you steal my garden gnomes?
Yeah.
And so I just didn't put them out. It was springtime. I didn't put them out yet, and I had all my garden gnomes like inside. And at that point, I only had one. I had Schmebulok, and that's his name. And we're buddies.
You showed them to me. I remember.
Yeah, so there's Schmebulok and Ragnar and all those guys. So I'm like, I'm hanging out, chilling. And I'm like, she wouldn't be stupid enough to come all the way from like central PA to here just to steal a garden gnome.
And
Well,
why? What's the what?
Well, her intention was to do like sort of a roaming gnome thing.
Okay. Buy her own gnome.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, it would literally cost you less money to buy a garden gnome from Target and do your own thing than to come here, steal mine, and then never give it back, and then I'll be pissed at you.
Yeah, that's just weird.
Yeah, I was like, okay, so you're gonna spend like, $20 to get here on gas and wear and tear on the car, steal my shit, and you could literally have your own garden gnome for $12.99 on
Right.
Target clearance.
$6.99 on sale.
Yeah, like, dude, they're there. Anybody could have one. So it's not like it was an expensive garden gnome. It
Well,
wasn't an
nice
antique.
to have a garden gnome, didn't you know?
So she she came here, and I'm hanging out inside and I'm knitting or whatever, and my husband comes walking in, and he's just like, he's got this look on his face. I'm like, what's up? And he goes, your friend's out there. She needs your help. And I'm like, she's here? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, what's she doing? And he's like, I don't know. She's stuck on the fence. And he just keeps walking. And I'm like, stuck on the fence? I'm
How
like,
is a man a few words?
so I go walking out to the garden, and I had gridded to some point, but not the full gridding yet. So and plus, there's the stuff out in the yard too that kind of keeps watch over the place.
Mhm.
Um and I go walking out there, and sure enough, she is stuck on the fence. And it's like a 3 foot high fence. It's not like a big fence.
Yeah, it's little.
Yeah, and she is literally hanging sideways off of it, stuck to the fence. Like her clothes are tangled in it.
You have a gate?
Yeah. Well, I had the padlock, and I had the gates closed, and I had the padlock on it, but you could literally just lift the padlock, flip the thing up, and pull the gates open. And
Yeah.
instead, she decided she was going to climb over the fence. And so as she's climbing over the fence, somehow she got stuck. And I think that, my little buddies in the garden probably had a lot to do with that, because they knew she was up to no good.
Mhm.
So I go walking out there, and she's literally hanging sideways, stuck on the fence, like a foot off the ground. And I'm like, what in God's name are you doing?
This is just like a grown-ass woman. The picture in my mind is just,
And I mean, it's not like
oh,
she was small. It wasn't, I mean, she was like a good, like 5'7". So it was like, this should have been no problem for her to just hop that fence at all. Like, I can hop that fence. And her clothes just tangled up on it. Like, that fence reached out and grabbed her. And I was like, and I just looked at her, and I was like, you tried to steal my shit. And she's like, help. And she's like, literally, like, flailing off this fence. And I'm like, how did you get so stuck on this fence? And she's like, I don't know, help me. And she's like flailing, and I'm like, get off that fence. And all of a sudden she just drops to the ground, like the fence let go of her. And I'm like, you messed with my garden. And she goes, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. And I'm like, and she's like crawling around on the ground, like trying to get her bearings back. And she's like, I don't know what happened. And I was like, you tried to steal from the garden. And she's like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, man, that's not cool.
so
And she's
what happened when she came in the house?
like, I didn't let her in the house. Not that time, anyway.
Mhm.
Because she started to come in, and I was like, yeah, no. And she's like, what's up? And I'm like, you got a rider. And she's like, what? And I'm like, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You need to just leave until you get rid of it. And so the next time she came back, um, she swore up and down before she came that she had gotten rid of it. And so I was like, okay, cool. And then when she came into the house, we were drinking, and I can't remember if it was like for a Halloween party or what, but she came, and I had like a snifter glass of Di Serono, and we had one of the old box TVs, so it was like a flat top that you can like put stuff on, like
Right.
flower pots and shit. And so I can't remember why I put the glass down, but I put the glass down on top of the TV, and it was there for like a good 5 minutes. It was not a big deal, and the TV wasn't even on. And when she came walking into the bar room, it's that TV like right there next to the fridge. When she
Mhm.
came walking into the bar room, that glass flew off the TV, hit her, spilled the Di Serono onto her, and
Oh.
dropped to the floor without breaking. Not a drop on the floor. It was all on her, and the glass didn't break. And she just got this horrified look on her face. And I was like, dude. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, you told me you got rid of it. And she's like, and I'm like, and she goes, your ghost doesn't like me. And I'm like, no, he does not.
And he's such a nice little old man.
Yeah, I mean, I get him when
I mean,
he.
he hid my keys, but that was kind of funny.
Yeah, and for me, he's not an old man.
Hmm.
He's like a middle-aged guy.
No, for me, he's a little old man.
I wonder. I wonder if it's the other owner, because we're the third owners of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if
Previous
you
two
met the
both died
second
in the
owner.
house, right?
Huh?
Previous two died in the house?
Um,
Or am I confusing it with something else?
I don't know if anybody died in the house. I just know that the original owners, the people who built it, still hang out. And they gave me, like, at least the guy, he gave me some hassle when we first moved in, when we started doing the renovations,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where, I finally had to tell him, like, we're restoring it back to the way that it was, because you have an amazing house and it's gorgeous underneath all this like 60s remodeling crap. So we're putting it back to the way that it was as much as possible. And after that, I had no problems with them. So yeah, I mean, basically when I gridded the house, it's like, anything that's got any negative intent, you can go. You're not invited. And anything that has no harm intent, no harmful intent, you can stick around if you want, or come and go as you please. I don't care, but don't mess with my shit. So we do have like a couple of elementals. We've got a lot of elementals in the garden and around the yard. And then we've got that guy, what's his face, Diggs, I guess his name is, who used to hang out here. And he used to hang out like over in that corner, and that's where the original owner would always hang out, was in the dining room inside and at the front door. And then whatever that nastiness was would hang out outside and be sullen. And then I came through. He scared the outside guy, scared me once and once only. And then I was like, you need to go. And it was just like, "Gah!" And I'm like, yeah, you freaking bully, get out of here. I was like, I've dealt with far worse than you.
Yeah, I've tried to teach my kids that you just have to set your mind and push,
Oh yeah, big time.
and then they go.
Yeah. And I mean, it's weird because it's not just Diggs doesn't just haunt here. He haunts the entire area. Like from here all the way down across the railroad tracks and everything. He's everywhere. And he's also over that way. In fact, they've done, there's a house down the block that's, it's a haunted house, and it's gotten on multiple TV shows. And it's a relatively recent build. It's not like it's an old house. And it just keeps coming back, but it could be because they keep gardening and digging up the grid that was put there. So yeah, when I talked to the owner, I was like, did you, when you did your landscaping, happen to dig up some stones on the corners of your property? And she goes, yeah, these white and black stones. And I'm like, put them back. And she's like, what? And I was like, yeah, somebody gridded your yard for you and you dug it up.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you broke the grid, so put it back. But they actually moved. They sold the house, so haven't heard anything about it since. So I guess the people who moved there got it blessed or whatever. But yeah, I mean, like, the thing that hangs out around the neighborhood's just a nasty. He's such an ass. I don't like him. But at the same time, it's like, he's just a bully.
Yeah.
He's a big chicken shit. The second you tell him, like, go, I'm done.
And they're gone.
Yeah, because it's just, I guess it's so used to having people afraid of it. And plus I had like the ghosts already in here that were already defending the perimeters. So yeah. But my sister still won't stay here, especially now that my cat's gone. Mr. Pants was my guardian. He used to patrol the house, keep everybody in line.
Yeah.
But yeah, now that he's gone, my sister won't stay here at all.
Does she not realize he's still there?
I I guess not. I guess maybe she doesn't want to think about it. I don't know. But yeah, he's definitely still hanging around. I hear the cat door open and close at night every once in a while, and I hear the jingle.
Mhm.
Uh,
Purring and
he's a sweetness.
yeah.
It's not even like I'm like, oh, you got to move on. It's like, no, if you want to stick around, stick around. If you want to move on, move on. Either way, it's cool.
I think some spirits can go back and forth as they please. Because I get a lot of visitations from, um, like I'll smell my dad's cologne and then I'll feel like a hand on my shoulder where he used to put it when we were having a very serious talk. Or, um, or I'll have my mom at the foot of my bed at night, like, you need to get your shit together. Like, I mean, she comes for good stuff too, but she likes to come to my sister at night too, and she's always like, girls, you need to get it together. And I can hear, girls.
My mom doesn't talk. Like, she'll come to us in our dreams, and every time she comes to us in our dreams, she doesn't talk, she mimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, just say it, And my sister ended up having this dream about her where she was in like Kmart or something, and all of a sudden she heard the pager go off calling my mom, and she was like, and she looks, and all of a sudden she sees my mom run past her, like trying to hide from her, and she's like, hey, and she goes like chasing after her, and she's like, what are you doing? And my mom's like, I'm not supposed to talk to you, it's against the rules. And she like kept running, and I'm like, I was like, Ma. And my dad's like, oh my God. He's like, she must be in hell. He's like, if she can't talk to people, she must be in hell.
Yeah. Like, I don't think my mom can help herself, and
Yeah.
in dreams it's easy for them, I think, because we're more open.
Yeah. And I mean,
As far as the speaking, like my daughter has seen like lights like swirling around each other that just kind of hang out around her. And my son sees full on people.
yeah. I mean, I've seen like multiple forms of, which it kind of messes with you a little bit, because some of the ghosts I've seen are like just as real as you and me. And it's like, whoa. And then they're just gone.
Yeah, it's like they step in and you see them take a couple steps and they'll look at you or not, and then they step back out, and
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
was
Like,
that alternate reality? Was it a spirit? Like, what just happened?
well, like here, especially, I'm on a battlefield. I live not far from Gettysburg. And in fact, my first experience in Gettysburg, I was 16, and I went to Gettysburg for some state competition for like some nerd group I was in. And I ended up, we went to the battlefield. And I remember like the night before we were wandering around, and it was when they still allowed the reenactors to camp out in the street. And they don't allow that anymore for obvious reasons. But so the reenactors would just like camp out. And I thought it was like some sort of like living thing, like, oh, you got all this stuff set up, and then you got mannequins. And then there's like one guy maybe who like tends the fire. Um but these guys were probably really drunk, sitting there just staring at the fire as one does.
Yeah.
And I'm walking through like, wow, these guys are so lifelike. And then like one of them blinks, and they're like, what the hell, man? And I'm like, geez. I was like, you guys are real. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, what are you? And they're like, reenactors. And I was like, oh. So the next day we go to the battlefield, and I go to Little Round Top, like immediately drawn to Little Round Top. And my penchant for towers on top of hills.
Yes, yes, I do.
So I immediately go to Little Round Top, and I go running up to the top to the observation deck, and there is a guy who's maybe about 18, looks about 18, dark hair, kind of pale, looking out, and he's wearing Union garb, but it was like weird Union uniform, and it didn't look like anything I'd seen from the other reenactors, and I was just like, what kind of weird reenactor is this? So I'm sitting there, and I started talking to him, because I was like, yeah, he looked so sad, and I was like, "Hey, come on, cheer up, we won." And he's like, "What?" And I was like, "The North, we won." And he blinked and like looked me up and down, kind of like really surprised, like, "Where did you come from?" And my friends were coming up the stairs like right behind me, and they were like, "Who are you talking to?" And I was like, "Oh, Mr. 1863 over here thinks the war's still going on." And I turn around and there's nobody there. And I mean, it's like it's up on the second level. I don't know if you've ever. I don't think we ever went there when you came to
Yeah,
visit.
but I've been there.
Okay, so that's like a pretty high observation desk, and it's surrounded by boulders.
Yeah.
So if you jumped off, you'd break something.
Yes.
And this dude was nowhere to be found. And I'm like,
Can I ask you a question? Did that guy, did he become the vampire Plum Run?
no,
Okay.
no, the Vampire Plum Run, sort of a mishmash of. He was kind of inspired by one of our mutual friends, who's like very gruff, but also inspired by like my friends who are tour guides for the battlefields. So I kind of like mishmashed them all together. So he is a conglomerate of probably about 10 people.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I'll talk to you about the initial appearance inspiration after we get done recording.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be really good.
Yeah, but yeah, so I I was just like, wow, this dude was real. Like he was solid. And then
Yeah, it's crazy the solid feeling. When we were at the Tower of London, um, we were in the tower where they kept the princes,
mhm,
and I could just feel like people crowded all around me in every room. There weren't other people in the rooms with us, but I felt like jostled and like just this despair. And it wasn't like famous people; it was just like
yeah,
regular dudes and women, that had opinions or whatever. But um, there was one point that I have a bad knee and bad hips, so I struggle with stairs on a good day. And there's these winding stone stairs, and I swear they're like this wide, and the step is like tiny, right?
yeah, like every monument in Gettysburg.
Yeah, like stumbled,
Oh,
and I felt a hand like steady me. And I was like to Simon, I was like, "Oh, thanks, hon." And he was like, "What?" And I looked back, and he was like too far away to have touched me.
dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Didn't see anyone, but I definitely felt them, which thank goodness I did, because I would have a more busted face than I do have.
Yeah, it's really weird. And
Weird.
there's a guy on a bike that rides around here, or used to ride around here. Um, for the first few years that we lived here, he would ride through and then go down towards the railroad tracks every year around June 30th, which was the battle in this town before it moved on to Gettysburg. And, it never occurred to me that there had been a battle here. I dig stuff up in the yard all the time, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. And, find like weird shit like all over the place, like pieces of pottery. And I was just like, okay, somebody was using this like a dumping ground, just like they did up in our property where the hotel was. Because we'd have like little trash heaps where they just dumped stuff. So I was like, okay, that's what it was at some point, and they just buried it, as they did.
Only
Uh,
you.
huh?
Only you would not put two and two together.
Well, I put two and two together when I was.
Dumbest smart person I've ever met.
I'm a savant.
Sometimes I wonder.
I'm a Pisces. Our heads are in the clouds.
It rains. Okay, sorry. Anyway, go ahead.
So, so I was doing research for the Metatron mysteries, um, and as I was going through the one bookshop, I found a book that talked about the battle specifically of this town. And I was like, there's a wait, what? And so I pick up the book, and in the book there is this drawing, and
Mhm.
it's a hand-drawn map of the battle lines that were in town. And I'm like, okay, where is this place? And I'm like, okay, train tracks. Train tracks would have been there from the beginning, and they're going to still be there because they're a pain in the ass to rip up.
Right.
So, sure enough, there's the train track, and then there's that weird ass intersection, and right up about maybe a block or so, there's the beginning of Bunker Hill, and it's my backyard. And I was like, well, hell. And it spread from
That
our
explains
yard.
a lot.
Yeah, and it went from like our yard all the way up to the hospital. Like that was Bunker Hill,
Hmm.
going all the way up. And when the Confederates came through, there was fighting through town, looting, etc. And then after Gettysburg, when the bodies were, everywhere, a lot of the bodies got shipped over, which is what you mostly hear about for this town, is that it was body storage,
Yeah.
with like lie pits. And other than that, you don't hear a lot about it. So one year, couple of years after moving here, I'd see this guy riding through every time, and it was like a beat up old bike, like really beat up. And I was just like, wow, that is an old bike. I'm like, this guy's taking it to the too far. And my neighbor across the street and I was in the garden the one day, and I was talking with her over the fence. And as we're talking, here comes the bike rider through, pure, 100% daylight, mid afternoon. He comes riding through, and I wave at him. I was like, hey, how's it going? And he almost fell. Like all of a sudden, he just like looked over, like completely startled, as if I had appeared out of nowhere. And the bike wobbles, and he like catches himself and goes pedaling off like crazy. And I was like, that was odd. And I look at Margaret. I'm like, reenactors, huh? And she's like, yeah, I guess so. And I was like, dude on the bike just literally rode between the two of us. And she goes, oh, I must have missed him. And I'm like, he literally rode in between the two of us. And she goes, oh, I must have blinked. I must not have been looking. And I'm like, so I'm thinking I'm nuts at this point. And I was talking to my neighbor down the street, Joy, and I was just like, okay. I was like, is it me, or is this area like crazy stupid haunted? And she goes, ah, you've seen the guy on the bike. I was like, yes. I thought he was a reenactor. She goes, you and I both know it's not a reenactor. And I was like, and she goes, and the other ones walking around, they're not reenactors either. And I was like, I assume,
Wait, what?
yeah, there's like,
No, I've seen them.
yeah. And so they would walk around, and I just assumed they were reenactors
So did
walking to
I.
Gettysburg because it was June 30th, and they were walking their way to Gettysburg, and it was going to take a while. And
Oh,
they're pretty hardcore. So they had really beat up uniforms and everything else. And I was like, wow, these guys are really taking it serious. And there's people in Gettysburg that take it like super super serious, where they've got houses that don't have running water. So I'm just like, okay, so it's just a really dedicated reenactor. No, it's not. And so they started doing a reenactment for our battle outside of town, out in one of the farms. And ever since they started doing that, I have not seen the reenactors.
that's so weird, Susie.
Hmm.
I just assumed that, yeah, they were headed to Gettysburg and,
Oh, they are, but
well, but I assumed that's why the people in town didn't bat an eye at them as I was going through town.
yeah, no, they don't see them. Or if they do, they just assume they're reenactors because the Civil War trail goes right through town. So either way, they're really not going to draw much attention because it's so common to see a reenactor around here, and
Mhm.
they're so solid that I honestly thought they were just regular people.
Yeah, I thought they were really, really good because the
Yeah,
looks on their
very authentic.
some of them, yeah, some of them look absolutely terrified. Others look incredibly sad.
Yeah,
And I was like, wow, these guys are really good.
yeah, and every one of them looks exhausted, and I'm just like, so yeah. So it turns out that underneath this entire town, it's an aquifer of running water. and a big giant slab of granite and a lot of quartz.
That would have been good to know before I went there.
Yeah, I figured it out once we really dug up the garden, and it was just like chunks of quartz coming up.
Oh, so just recently.
Yeah. Like, I mean, over the years, like, I dig up some quartz and I figured they just added it. But when the guys came in and, like, stripped the garden down to the roots, it was just chunks of quartz in the clay.
Okay, I guess I
I
can't.
mean, like, chunks. Like, you would not put these into
Did
your
you
garden.
save them?
Yeah, totally save them. I got one right up on the thing there. Actually, no, I put that one back in the garden for now. It'll come back
I
in.
wonder your garden grows away though.
Oh, I got crystals galore out there right now.
Mhm.
They come in for the winter, but yeah, there's tons of crystals out there right now. So stay tuned for our next episode where we talk about gritting and energy and paranormal stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out with us. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that cool YouTube stuff.
Or actually, when you go over to the YouTube channel, because this is the Facebook one.
Oh yeah. Well, see, I figured this would be the episode because it went so
Oh,
long.
yeah, it could be the episode.
So edit this part out.
Keep it in, it's authentic.
Like, this is us. It's not an act.
It is. This is
Really are.
totally us.
All right. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you next time. Bye.